Welcome to the conversation. My name is Benjamin Dixon, host of the Benjamin Dixon Show, filling in. And I'm excited this evening to be speaking with Inse Ufat. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the New Georgia Project, the organization that is responsible for registering over 500,000 voters in the state of Georgia leading up to the 2020 election. Inse, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Hi, Benjamin.
It is always a pleasure to speak to you and to see what kind of amazing footwear you're wearing. That is, I know that has absolutely nothing to do with anything, but you have the dopest shoe game in the state of Georgia, probably in the country. But let's talk about this election and your work at New Georgia Project. Tell us about the organization and your work there specifically.
Yeah, so the New Georgia Project is a nonpartisan civic engagement organization. We're probably best known for doing large, massive voter registration efforts. To date, again, we registered 500,000 Georgians of color and young Georgians in all 159 of Georgia's counties. And so, yeah, it's voter registration, it's voter education, and it's voter mobilization. And at the core of all of that is a sort of bold, aggressive research agenda that we, I say, I'm a church girl. I grew up as a church girl, so we study to show ourselves approved.
A workman who need not be ashamed. I'm sorry, you just took me back there. But go ahead, tell us more about that research. Like, what are you finding, and how is that directing your work at the New Georgia Project?
Yeah, so one, we learned that. Just a clear example. We live in Georgia, we live in the South. There is a legacy of voting rights activism. There's also a legacy of violence being visited upon Black activists and Black people trying to exercise their right to vote. And so there are times that we used to hear people say, and we used to do it ourselves, your ancestors died for the right to vote. Right. And what our research shows is that that's not the most effective messaging. That when we actually talk to young voters and new voters about the things that they care about and connect the act of voting to that's actually much more likely to get people to register and to actually show up and vote. And so the way that we train our organizers now is that you have twice as many ears as you do mouths. And so we should be listening to people, and people will tell you what their hopes are for themselves, for their families, for their communities, and what their fears are. And so we talk about how voting can help build the world that they want to live in or affect the change that they want to see. Our research also shows, for example, that the number one issue that young Georgia voters voted on this year, or the way that they evaluated candidates, was around racial justice and what it said about it. And it's across race, across gender, and across geography, that voters under 39 care about racial justice and care about where their candidates stand on those issues. And then our research also shows that all Georgians across race, across age, across geography, the number one issue that they were all voting on was COVID, coronavirus. Now, for women, it was COVID as a healthcare issue, right? How do I keep myself safe? How to keep my family safe? Right. For men, it is COVID as an economic issue. Massive job losses, the housing issues that are associated with that, but that COVID is on the top of everyone's minds.
Wow, that's the research is revealing, and it really makes sense. It adds up that people are motivated by the things that are important to them, economically, politically, financially, all of the above. What kind of impact do you think? And I know it's an obvious question, but I couldn't have you on here without directly connecting your work to Georgia turning blue. What kind of impact do you think, political or otherwise, but just the raw registration of 500,000 people? Can you feel that impact that you had on the New Georgia Project had on this election?
I can, we do, and we're really proud of it. adding 500,000 people to the voter rolls, expanding the electorate, adding 500,000 people of color to the voter rolls, I think is absolutely a part of the equation that has led us to this place where Georgia is America's newest battleground state. That is America's newest swing state. Donald Trump, President Trump, won 71% of the white vote in Georgia and still lost. Wow. And so we have been telling people for years now that it is a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multilingual, progressive majority in Georgia, and that you do not have to get a majority of white voters in order to win. That you don't have to chase after this mythical moderate swing voter, white swing voter, to bring them back to progressives or bring them back to the Democratic Party. That there are alternative pathways to winning statewide in Georgia, and it's through an energized and activated and registered Black electorate.
And now all eyes are obviously on Georgia because the balance of the Senate weighs with the election that's coming up, the special election on January 5th between Kelly Loeffler and Reverend Raphael Warnock and David Perdue, the Republican against the Democrat Jon Ossoff in the state of Georgia. It is the epicenter. You are there. What are your feelings around that election in terms of messaging, in terms of what you just got through saying, going after the mythical moderate Republican?
Right. I think that we are going to shatter turnout records, like historical turnout records. I think that there's a lot that has been said about the sort of structural advantage that Republicans have. And everything that we are seeing indicates that folks are gonna come back and vote again. That there's nothing that focuses and sharpens the mind like the credible threat of death. And we're talking about, a dozen hospitals that are closing, and many of them in rural parts of the state. And I think that matters because hospitals are not only places where people have babies, where people go to get well, but they also tend to be the largest employers in a lot of communities. And so the Republicans are trying to take away healthcare in the middle of a pandemic. And folks, we just finished Thanksgiving. And we're headed into the Christmas holidays. And, many of our neighbors are missing loved ones. And that hits hard and that hits home. And while your vote won't bring them back, it's certainly a tool that people are recognizing that they can use to protect themselves, to protect the living.
Right. It won't bring anyone back, but it definitely will help keep other people here, right? And I love the way you phrase that there's nothing sharpens your attention and your motivation than the threat of death. And we have been living under that for some time. One of the most fascinating data points that I saw from the exit polling from the 2020 election here in Georgia was the fact that I believe it was 93% of Black progressive youth under the age of 29. I may have the age range wrong, but there was a 93% of young Black voters who went out to support Joe Biden. Talk about that election, and do you fear or have any concern that there could be a drop off? Or are you confident in what you said that there is definitely going to be an uptick? And do you see any differences in the campaigns in terms of messaging and how that might specifically affect that voter turnout that pushed Joe Biden over the edge?
Yeah. Okay, so there will be a drop off, right? Like the general election was essentially like 3.5 years of campaigning, right? It's constant messaging and people preparing for that. So that felt like a high watermark. So, and runoffs just by definition, we will see a drop off. But what I'm saying is that the 20% that we are used to seeing, that I think that we might exceed that, given the enthusiasm, and it's not really enthusiasm, it's resolve
Right.
That people are like, I gotta do this. This is important. This is my duty. I'm a citizen. This is what I can do to, jumpstart the economy, protect us. So that's what we're seeing. I think that the 93% of young Black voters, again, I think it demonstrates and highlights a sophistication in young Black voters' analysis that like their people weren't wild or excited about President-elect Biden. But we aren't electing somebody to join us in the group chat. That you're electing somebody that will, bring this pandemic to a close and help jumpstart the economy. So we've lived through a pandemic, we've lived through a summer of protest, and people are over it. Young people are over it, and so they are looking for someone to co-govern. That somebody will go to DC to do the people's work.
And say, with the last few seconds that we have, can you tell everyone how to get up with you and answer this question that everyone in Georgia or across the country wants to know? How can they help?
So we are having we're fielding about 1,000 volunteer shifts every day. So if you go to newgeorgiaproject.org or you go to mobilize.us and look for the New Georgia Project, or our C4 affiliate, the New Georgia Project Action Fund, you can sign up the phone bank, you can sign up the text message, you can sign up to Canvas, but you can also donate, newgeorgiaproject.org/donate. That this work, elections are opportunities for us to flex our power, to test our power. And the work of the New Georgia Project is to build power with communities of color in between elections. And so you don't register hundreds of thousands of Black folks in a place like Georgia if you start after Labor Day. So we start, our traditional start date is MLK Day every year. And we will be back at it in January of 2021.
Awesome. And say Mfat is CEO of New Georgia Project, doing so much important work there in Georgia. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Benjamin. I appreciate it.
Pleasure's ours.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.